to dedicate our learning. I will start again. I'd like to dedicate our learning today in honor of the Israel Defense Forces and the brave soldiers, volunteers, citizens of Israel who are fighting tirelessly on behalf of the Jewish state of Israel and for Jewish people the world over. If you would like to dedicate your learning today, please take a moment to write in the chat and share from where you're joining us today so your voice can also be heard. Please take a moment to do that. I'd like to introduce you to Avi. Avi Ben-Hur is one of our Melton Field educators in Israel and on other World Heritage tours that we as a community take around the world. He is a historian as well as a field educator teaching tour guides in Israel and teachers here in the US. We are on day 20 of the war, during which time Avi has been journaling, continuing to teach, and has developed a curriculum that has already been implemented here in the US, helping high school students to develop a deeper understanding regarding Israel's challenges and dilemmas. Avi has been living in Israel for 40 years, and today will share with us his perspective on looking at this crisis through different lenses. We have a lot of material to get through today, and we may not get to everyone's questions, but encourage you to write them in the chat in the hopes that we can. We will break between sections to take questions and get to as many as possible. Adi will be helping us mute devices today, already started. So please don't be offended if that happens to you, but sometimes iPads and other devices become unmuted quite easily, causing feedback and other interference. Without further ado, Avi, I am turning over to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It's about 8:02 here in Jerusalem. I'm going to start actually with a public service announcement. I want to warmly recommend that you do not look at the films and videos that Hamas and Islamic Jihad and other terrorists filmed as they were doing the atrocities. If you've already done it, then it's a bit too late. But if you haven't yet, don't. I'm saying this for two reasons. First of all, it's now, last week or so, coming out in Israel that a realization just how dangerous this is to people's spirits and psychologically. And so we're hearing more and more recommendations to people that they shouldn't be viewing these videos. The second thing is, which is abundantly clear, that this is part of their psychological warfare. The videos that they made deliberately and they put up very, very quickly and disseminated quickly have been a real boon, because it's continued a kind of a cycle of terror way beyond its expiration date, you might say. It has no expiration date. And it not only is effective among Israeli Jews, but I'm sure it's also effective against Jews around the world and other decent, reasonable people who those kind of atrocities are things that nobody wants to see or even think that could happen. So we have to be cautiously careful, and it's paid off for them. It's paid off. They took a risk. I think they didn't expect so many countries to stand by Israel. I'm going to get to that in a moment. But on the other hand, public opinion very, very quickly shifted, I'm not sure in favor of Hamas, but let's say against Israel for sure, and in favor of Palestinians at large, the oppressed Gazans, and so on and so forth. So seriously, if you haven't looked at these things, don't. And encourage everybody not to look at them. And I'm saying that very, very seriously. I want to start with maybe something positive. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a PowerPoint. I'm going to share it with you. The truth is, I'm not going to use a lot of visuals today. Usually I like to use visuals, but I feel that the subject matter that we're dealing with is just too much, and we don't need the visuals for it. Still, let me start with the following, and this is also another service to all of you. I think that we're living in a day and age where on the one hand, we have too much information coming in that direction. On the other hand, we don't know what is a reliable source. So I want to share a source with you, which towards the end, because I don't want people going off now in the middle and going on this site. In the end, Andrea will send you a link to this in the chat feature. This is a very specific app, or let's say service, that the Institute for National Security Studies, which is a think tank that is associated with Tel Aviv University, has been putting up. And essentially, it's updated every few hours. The last update was 4 hours. Yes, 4 hours ago. That's what you're seeing over there today. And what it's showing you, as you can see here, the number of rockets that have been shot into Israel since October 7th. Stop and look at that number, 7,500 rockets. That's something that's not really making, I think, most of the news feed of the rockets that Israel is receiving and has been receiving from the very, very beginning of the attacks. You notice the number of reservists that were called up. Very large number. It's not 100% of the reservists, but a lot more people showed up than were called up. Okay, and we'll get back to that a little bit later on. You notice Israeli hostages or captives, 224. If you look at this page 4 days ago, or 3 days ago, it said 220. Okay, and that's a little bit strange because in the last 4 or 5 days, they've released 4 captives. In other words, this is a growing number, which really means that we don't know. We really do not know the exact number of captives being held. By the way, again, I don't know if it's clear to everybody, but a significant percentage, maybe even as much as 50%, 50, of the captives are either foreign nationals, meaning they don't hold Israeli citizenship at all, or they're dual nationals. They could be Israeli Americans, Israeli French, Israeli Brits, what have you. Okay, some of them are not Jewish. There are some Israeli Arab Muslims, Bedouin, who are also captured and are being held captive. There are Nepalese, there are Thai people that are being held captive. So it's you know, and people probably who participated in the music festival who came from abroad. So many of the hostages are either not Israeli or not even Jewish, or dual nationality, which complicates things even more. You see the number of internally displaced Israelis. I think it's important for us to stop here for a moment and understand something. I see a lot of different numbers in the newsfeed in Israel. I see numbers as high as 200,000. And what you need to understand right now is that obviously tens of thousands were evacuated or fled from the what's known as the Gaza envelope, the area that the Israeli part that is enveloping or is adjacent to the Gaza Strip that was attacked. We also have over 100,000 Israelis who were told by the government to leave the Israeli-Lebanese border because things are heating up also with Hezbollah. Again, I don't know how much that is hitting the news feed, but every single day we're having attacks on Israel by Hezbollah. Most of the attacks are hitting military positions, but some of them have also hit civilian homes or businesses. To date, the last time I checked, 7 Israeli soldiers were killed, 48 Hezbollah terrorists were killed. And they're keeping that up, but on a low flame. And again, where you see it says Israeli casualties, 1,400 killed. A week and a half ago, it was 1,300. So again, that's a number that we're still not sure exactly how many people were killed. And again, it says Israeli casualties, but of those 1,400, we also had foreign nationals. We also had non-Jews, either as foreign nationals or as Israeli citizens. And I think it's important for us to keep that in mind. Not going to tarry on this too much, just sharing this with you. It's a very interesting interactive link, and you'll get it towards the end of the program. So you have something which is a pretty reputable source, and it's a very good think tank. So I just wanted to share that with you. Let's go now to something else. This map is actually not up to date. I couldn't find one that's up to date. And this is actually showing a reality of about 2 weeks ago, which means pretty much towards the beginning of this. We're now at day 20. So this is, let's say in the first week. It's giving us a sense of which countries were supportive of Israel 2 weeks ago, which condemned everybody, condemned all violence, which condemned Israel, support Hamas, and so on and so forth. And it's kind of interesting. There are no real big surprises here. What you can see, North America, US, Canada, supporting Israel. What you see in South America there with the dark blue is actually incorrect. It's showing you Brazil supportive. Brazil is not supportive. Brazil very, very quickly went to condemning all the violence, and I think that they're shifting to condemning Israel now. Argentina is supportive of Israel, and if you look on the northwestern point, you're looking there at Venezuela and Colombia, two human rights champions as states, and they're condemning Israel, of course. Look at Africa. South Africa condemns Israel. Who is supporting Hamas in Africa? That's Algeria. Please note, west of Algeria, to the left of Algeria on the map, is Morocco. It's condemning all violence. That's very, very interesting. Okay, as an Arab state. Same with Egypt. Same with Egypt. Okay, same with Saudi Arabia. Same with Saudi Arabia. Okay, we have actually full diplomatic relations with Morocco and Egypt. We don't with Saudi Arabia, so it's very, very interesting and it's telling. And again, who's supporting Hamas? You're seeing there Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran. No huge surprises over there. What doesn't really reflect here, which you know today very well, is that Russia, which I think began condemning all the violence, is mostly condemning Israel at this point. They're kind of, let's say, they're still in this condemning all violence, but and China, is not really weighing in at all. Now, looking at these are the countries, but I think it's important for us to recognize what's been going on in terms of nationally. So I know you know this, but I think it's important for us to remember this. The United States, the US government, the Biden administration stepped in immediately supporting Israel, condemning Hamas. The US, within less than 48 hours, began to airlift ammunition, spare parts. As of the last update I was 2 days ago, 62 planes had landed in Israel in 18 days from the US with, again, ammunition, very important things that we need. You're very well aware of the carrier force, two carrier forces. And we're going to talk a little bit later on of their meaning, but they're extremely significant. I'll do the spoiler right now. Probably the fact that President Biden gave an order to send the carrier force is what has deterred Hezbollah and Iran from entering into this fray in a meaningful way. Buying Israel breathing space, but we will talk about that later on. That's important. I'm showing you here on the screen a poll that was taken on the 17th. So that's already, it's already, I don't know, almost 10 days. It's 8 days, whatever, 8 days ago. And it shows something interesting that 76% of US voters, regardless of which party, okay, thought that supporting Israel was a national interest, okay. 64% of the voters approved of the US sending weapons and military equipment, okay. And here, I don't know if you can see this well enough, but very, very important, 61% of the voters said that their sympathies lie with Israel more than the Palestinians, okay. And in terms of responsibility for this, 72% of US voters see the Palestinians as responsible for the outbreak of the violence of Palestinians. We're talking about it's Hamas, okay, and we're going to talk about that as well. That's an important distinction. You're probably aware of the fact that 97 senators out of 100 voted in support of Israel, and today, 420 out of 435 Congress men and women voted supporting Israel and condemning Hamas. 12 opposed that. 5 didn't vote. And there's 1 seat vacant. Did I get that right? I may have screwed that up. There's 435. Anyway, I know it's 420 voted for. Oh, so let me give you the bottom line. There is bipartisan political support. Okay. There's bipartisan political support. Okay. But can you guys hear me okay? Okay, I didn't get cut off, right? Okay, there's bipartisan political support across the board in the United States at this moment. And this is very, very important, okay, for Israel. And Israelis are very much appreciative of it. If you didn't see or hear or read President Biden's speech in Tel Aviv. I want to warmly recommend it. It's considered in Israel today to be a canonical speech. It's an historical speech. It is the most pro-Zionist and pro-Israel speech that any, not just president, any non-Israeli leader has ever given. And it's the most Zionist and pro-Jewish speech that anybody has given, okay, outside of Israel. So it's considered a remarkable speech, and Israelis are very, very grateful and thankful for that. And that is very significant, okay? And of course, this is the story when we're dealing with the governments. And by the way, it's important also to say that, you know, the Prime Minister of Great Britain came and offered support, and France and Italy and the Czech Republic and Austria and Germany. Of all of these, the US and Germany sent also warships to the area, have actually shown support on the ground in terms of arms or military support. Macron, you may have heard, is floating an idea as the day before yesterday to create a multinational force that will fight against Hamas, something similar to that, something that was erected to fight ISIS. Shows with Israel, and that's interesting in of itself. Okay, so I think it's important for us to keep this in mind. Now, those are the governments, and finally, the EU, European Union, also stepped up to the plate, support of Israel. However, what are we finding among the people? And here, this is random because there's so many images to show you, but I'm showing something that you already know. This is an image taken just 4 or 5 days ago in Warsaw, and you take a look at the sign that's being held by the way, evidently a Norwegian lady who's there, not Polish, and it's very, very telling. Okay, but I think this is even more telling, and this is something that this is, I think, from Columbus, Ohio, if I'm not mistaken, from the river to the sea. Make no mistake in terms of the meaning of this term. The river is the Jordan River, and the sea is the Mediterranean Sea. And this slogan, from the river to the sea, means that the Palestinian state is going to erase the Jewish state of Israel. That is what these folks are displaying, and this is what they are promoting. And again, it's everywhere. It's also on the campuses. So here I'll share something personal. My eldest child, my son, Noam, is on an exchange program in Seville, in Spain, at University of Seville. And on October 10th, this student you see here, there's a photo he took off, that my son took from his phone. It's on the left-hand side. It's a pro-Palestinian shirt. Now, I'm stopping here and saying there's a reason why I said he walked into the class on October 10th. There's a big focus we talk about October 7th. But I want to remind you something that for us here is very, very clear. I'm not sure it's clear for all of you. It took the Israeli defense establishment, that means the Israel Defense Forces and the Shin Bet and the police and everybody, 3 full days to gain control over the 22 Israeli civilian communities that had been invaded. There were hundreds of terrorists still in these villages, kibbutzim, towns, holding people hostage, and had to be shot and killed or captured. It took us 3 days. In other words, during that 3-day period, we didn't take action in the Gaza Strip. The first thing that we did was we needed to deal with, securing that border, making sure that we had killed all the terrorists that had come in, and only then we proactive about starting to significantly bomb. So when this student comes in here, what we have at this point are the massacres and atrocities done by a terror organization, and we don't have an Israeli response. My son wrote a letter, university. It has not been answered till now. This he took a photo of yesterday for me. This is on the campus, and this is what it says. This is the translation to English. Okay, solidarity with the poor Palestinians, stop the genocide in Gaza. There's a student strike on October 26th, and it's being supported by the student council. Okay, and what you see here with my cursor, if you can see it, okay, the emblem of the student council My son said some kind of like communist imagery. In any event, this is all over Spain. And in fact, if you're aware of it, there's been a call in the United States on the college campuses for a general strike. And they're not striking because of the atrocities that were done to the civilians in Israel, okay, but rather for the Palestinians, for the Gazans, and so on and so forth. So this is exacerbating over time, and I think you know this. Anti-Semitism is rising everywhere. The Metropolitan Police of London reported last week there's been a rise of 1,375% in anti-Semitic incidents since this war broke out, which is an insane percentage. The ADL, Anti-Defamation League, just yesterday, the day before yesterday, declared that's been a 21% rise of anti-Semitism in the United States. And as you know, it's happening all over the college campuses. There's one tiny, tiny, tiny silver lining in all this, because there's very little silver lining I can see in this. It's my understanding that in the United States, but not in Europe, there has been a pushback, particularly against some of the Ivy League schools, by alumni, by donors, by people who sit on the boards, Jews and non-Jews, who are just feel it's disgraceful. Either the Ivy League schools or other universities, state universities, who are allowing, terrible racist statements and support of Hamas and what was done to civilians here on October 7th, or professors or administrators. Okay, and there's been a pushback, and it's causing, to a certain extent, some universities to pause. Okay, and this pushback can evidently have some effect. And today, the governor of Florida is now is outlawing some of these student groups from doing this kind of stuff in the colleges and universities in Florida. But this is a strike. This is a struggle, and it's very important not to stay quiet in this struggle. So I think at this point I'm going to stop and check out some of the questions, if there are questions that were sent in.
So Avi, we have lots of very positive comments, which you'll be able to read, and people are sharing with each other. We do have a question. Jen Stark Blumenthal. I'm not going to share the question, only because I think that I'm pretty sure Avi's going to get to it in a section further down. So Avi, I think that we're looking at time now. So I think it's probably a good idea to continue, and I'll continue to monitor the questions.
Okay, so let me share again.
But I just want Jen to know that I'm not ignoring that question. We will get to that question. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, let me take you back to the PowerPoint. Okay, I will be there in a second. Okay, so what's the general vibe in Israel right now? Okay, I think that we have a kind of bizarre mixture of things that are going on here. Obviously, and this is a no-brainer, we all understand this, our general sense of security nationally and even personally, individually on a family level, has been very, very badly damaged. And without a doubt, our strategic deterrence against some of our neighbors has also been dramatically undermined. This is very, very obvious. Unfortunately, many Israelis fell into the trap of seeing the horrendous videos that I mentioned previously, and it's adversely affecting a lot of people. I'll just share with you, I think that one of the reasons that we're going to find that a lot of the countries that are standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel right now, starting from the US and through the UK and through France and Italy and Germany and the Czech Republic and Austria and so on and so forth, is that their leaders who've come here, their heads of state, their foreign ministers or secretary of state, and in the American context, we're looking at we're looking at very, very senior officers in the US Armed Forces, have all been shown these videos, uncut. And so that's something that is striking into their hearts and souls as well. also foreign journalists have been showing, and there are reports that foreign journalists seeing this, some of them have been throwing up. Okay, so it's in that sense, it will have only in that sense some kind of positive impact. But generally speaking, it is really so terror here. And to be honest with you, what it teaches us, and I'll explain this image I put up over here in a moment. What it teaches us is that Hamas knows us. That means us, Israeli Jewish society, and Jewish society at large, inside and out. They know the sum of all of our fears, and they are shooting right into the sum of those fears. 3 days ago, Hamas shot rockets into Kibbutz Yad Mordechai. Kibbutz Yad Mordechai was established in 1943 to commemorate Mordechai Analevich, who was one of the senior commanders of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, who fell fighting in May of 1943 in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And this kibbutz was also heroic during the War for Independence, managed to hold the Egyptian army up for 6 days, okay, slowed them down. This kibbutz also managed to fight off the Hamas invaders, who did not manage to penetrate this kibbutz. This kibbutz has a Holocaust museum, and what is special about it, maybe unique means one of a kind, it's special for sure, maybe unique, is that it has a reconstruction of the command bunker in Mila 18. Some of you remember that Leon Uris novel, a romanticized version of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Mila 18, it's Mila Street, number 18 Mila Street, was where the command bunker of Analevich was located, where Analevich, when the Nazis found him there, broke in, set off a hand grenade, took his life, took as many of them as he could, with him, okay? And essentially, they managed to shoot a rocket into the museum, and check this out, they even did damage to the reconstructed bunker. I mean, this is not accidental. We're talking about something here that was very, very deliberate, okay? It's very, very deliberate. And as I said, they know us inside and out. They know us very, very well. And so people are not traveling too much. You don't see a lot of traffic. People trying to get back to work. In some parts of the country, schools have reopened, like in Jerusalem. Okay, in other parts of the country, they have not. So that's part of what we're seeing over here. The flip side of what I just told you right now is that immediately, while the events were taking place, I'm talking about already on the 7th of October, we had civil society self-mobilize, and incredible numbers of people, at last count something like 15,000, but it's more than that, jumped into their cars to evacuate people that were under attack while the attacks were still taking place. Some of the people who did that had no weapons of their own, and they extricated people out of there. We had all of the organizations that were leading the protests for 10 months, spun on a dime and used all of their organizational skills that they'd honed in 10 months and utilized them to evacuate people, clothe them, feed them, find them a place to sleep, much, much faster than the government. And by the way, it's not just them. All the rifts that we saw in the last 10 months in Israeli society have been swept under the carpet now, for sure. And everybody from all over Israeli society are working together, okay? Civil society is working together. Look, lo and behold, we've had several thousand ultra-Orthodox young men, army age, who are showing up to volunteer for the army. And already a few days ago, 150 were conscripted who have paramedic training, and they're being integrated as like a second tier. And that's dramatic. That is dramatic. That Haredi ultra-Orthodox Israeli society is stepping up to the plate. And this is a huge, huge deal. It really spells, I think, in the not too distant future, a real integration of the ultra-Orthodox into overall Israeli society. And this is a huge step. And we're really seeing that civil society has come together dramatically. Talked about the reserves being mobilized. It sounds like a joke, but actually they estimate that 150% of the people showed up, those who were called. How do you get to 150%? Lots of people showed up who weren't called. and said, "We're okay. You didn't call me. I'm ready to go." Or I've been out of the manpower now for 5 years, but I still know. I remember, and I have this skill and that skill. And I want to use my skills here. So there's a lot of motivation to rebuild the security of the country. But again, that is also tempered by the fact that the army is sitting there and waiting now for several weeks. It's grating on the civilian population. It's grating on the soldiers themselves. It's not easy. And we'll talk, not this section, we'll talk a bit later on about why, what's the delay, and what are the thoughts about what to do, and so on and so forth. This, I think, is very important. There's something else I want to talk about, which may not have crossed your radar screens. And what I'm referencing right now is what's happening with Arab society in Israel. That is to say, what is happening with the 2 million Arab citizens of the state of Israel. So the big picture is that the overwhelming majority of them have been behaving in an exemplary fashion, the overwhelming majority. And by the way, we also had Israeli Arab citizens who also ran down to the south and extricated people. We have a Bedouin Muslim Israeli Arab bus driver without a weapon who extricated 15 people who were wounded. Okay, in that music party when the shooting was still going on. We had again an Arab medic who was murdered. He was trying to help people, patch them up. He was murdered by Hamas. So we've also had both people killed, Arab citizens killed by Hamas and Islam Jihad. We've had some Arab Israeli citizens who have been taken hostage as well. Okay, this is important. There have been some individuals here and there who have been supportive of Hamas, okay, whether in the university or wherever, and they're paying a price for that. But there's also a kind of fear, and the fear stems from the fact that what happened on October 7th has really shaken Israeli Jewish society to our core, and it's people who doesn't matter what your politics are or were, are now taking a second look at also Israeli Arabs, and this makes things very, very complicated. I want to share three stories that I know firsthand. The first one is that I personally, within 24 hours, received WhatsApp from a Palestinian from East Jerusalem who I trained as a guide. He holds an Israeli guiding license. He's a Muslim. He's a Sufi. He's a devout Muslim. And he wrote to me, "I don't have the words to describe the horror of what was done." This is October. He's writing to me less than 24 hours, and he's written me more than one like that. On the other hand, a very close friend of mine, very close Palestinian from East Jerusalem, who became a full Israeli citizen. My friend helped him get a very good job, has been posting on his Facebook pro-Hamas stuff. So that's happening as well. And my wife, who's a clinical psychologist, is working also in the field with Arab psychologists, and it's tough. It's tough. She had to run a conversation with her peers that she's training, other like more junior psychologists and psychotherapists, and it was tough. It was a very, very rough conversation in terms of participants. So this is something we're also trying to navigate here, and it's not something small, folks. It's not something small, because the Arab Israelis are 20% of the population, and when we emerge from this, whatever it might be, there are going to be real questions about that as well. A lot of damage is done that goes beyond the obvious damage that we know about. So I think that I'll stop here and take questions if people wrote in questions. And I seem to have lost some of my lighting here. I don't know why.
So we do have a few questions. We have lots and lots of comments, so I'll try to keep it to Sandra is asking, how did Hamas happen to know the Israeli country and little details? Spies, moles? That's a question. And Michelle, how do we become smarter than they are? Why aren't we anticipating this and fighting back in the same way?
Okay, one at a time. Hamas took the time and energy to study us. You have Hamas prisoners and Israeli prisoners. They learned Hebrew. They read our newspapers. They read the social media. They're very sharp. One of the things that is absolutely insane, and you may not have heard of this, but in Israel, it's a big, it's unbelievable. The present government and the previous government, created a policy of allowing more and more Gazan laborers into Israel to earn a living. And the present government got it up to almost 20,000 people entering per day. The salaries that they earn in Israel are 5 times what they can earn in the Gaza Strip, which means that in principle, 20,000 people are supporting, let's say, 100,000 people. Okay, and so the idea was that, well, this is good for their economy, it's good for them. What we've discovered, to our dismay, is that some of these laborers, we don't know how many of them, were actually coming in to spy. And we found on dead terrorists documents where let's say they fell in a kibbutz where they had schematics where every single house the kibbutz is, how many family members, how many children, how many elderly. It was on that level. Okay. And they also, in their documents, they also targeted the children and the women. Everything was done very, very deliberately. It has to be said now, it's very, very clear that none of this was, letting off steam, rage. No, this was done systematically. It was planned. We have found the documentation. We've also captured quite a few of the terrorists and interrogated them, and we have them filmed saying it. This was very, very well planned, and it was based on intelligence. So yes, they learned us much. They studied us and learned about us much, much better than we studied about and learned about them on every level. They know us inside and out. And I say that, and it's very, very clear. And as the days are going on, they're showing us more and more just how well they really understand our psyche and who we are. And it's clear that our fiasco, this snafu, has shown that we really did not read them very well, and that's very clear. The second question was
the second question. Go ahead.
Was
how do we become? How do we? So the question is, how do we become smarter than they are? Why are we not anticipating this and fighting back in the same way?
Okay, so all right. So look, in terms of getting smarter than, we so disparaged them in terms of their intelligence, in terms of their bravery, okay, that even 2, 3, 4 days into this event, we were blaming Iran. Like we couldn't give Hamas enough credit. That's how much we disparaged them. Hubris before the fall, okay? When you disparage your enemy, that's when you get sloppy. And that's what happened to us. And this has been, of course, an eye-opener, and we need to get much, much better. But actually, we need right now, we have other things that we have to deal with right now, which we're going to talk about, hopefully, in a little bit. And we have things on our agenda that are immediate. But yes, in the mid and long term, we need to study them much, much better. We need to anticipate as much as one can anticipate, and we need to be much, much more vigilant. There's no question about that. All those comments are correct.
Okay, I think we have another question, but I think we should answer it in the context of the next sections, which is the government willing to exchange the hostages for 6,000 terrorists Israel has in jails? Let's move that question to another section, because I think that way we can get to we can move on. We have 20 minutes left, Avi. I'm just reminding you of our time.
Okay, all right. Okay, that being the case, so actually I'm going to jump into, I might be actually answering that question now. So let me go back. I'm going to put back up, share the screen again. 1 second. Okay. I'm going to explain what you're looking at in a few moments. I know it's a bit small and I will enlarge it, but give me a few moments before that. Look, we have some major challenges facing Israel right now. Let's start with something that I'm not going to go deeply into right now, but I think it's important for all of you to know this if you don't know this. There has absolutely been a rupture in the public trust and faith, both in the government and in the entire security establishment. And it's very clear that both of them, first and foremost the security establishment, but also the government, have to somehow repair these ruptures. And the ruptures run very deep. And I'm not going to say more about that at the moment. Number one. Number two, we have to reinstate our deterrence, our strategic deterrence, because in the absence of that, we're not going to last very long in the neighborhood. I'm showing this slide to you, and I'm actually going to try to zoom in if I can. A moment. Okay, I'm going to try to zoom in for you. Yes, okay. Let's do it. Oops, that did not work. Sorry about that. Why did that happen? We're experiencing technical difficulties. Let's do that again. When all else fails, put on your spectacles and it may work better. Okay, here we go. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a blow up over here. Okay. What you're seeing here is an Israeli estimate of the arsenal in the hands of Hezbollah, not Hamas, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And essentially, the Israeli estimates are that Hezbollah is holding 150,000 missiles, rockets, projectiles. By the way, the United States, the US estimate is 200,000. It's more than the Israeli one. But I want to focus on the middle section, and I'm putting my cursor on it. You can see it where it says missiles. Okay. And I want to show you something interesting here. If we take a look at the ranges here, okay, the first one 160 kilometers, okay, and the warhead 600 kilograms multiplied by 2.2 to get the poundage. If we now turn to the map that you see on the right-hand side, you'll notice that 160 kilometers leaves Haifa and Tel Aviv and Jerusalem within range of the first one we're looking at here. The second one, which is 210 kilometers, they're all in range. Actually, 210 kilometers is leaving 80% of the Israeli population and 80% of the Israeli industrial and economic infrastructure within range of these missiles and rockets. Folks, 600 kilograms in a warhead is enough punch to take down my entire building on my head. My fortified safe space will not save me if a missile that has a warhead of 600 kilograms hits my building. Okay, and if you look here, it says they have tens of thousands of these. Okay, there's some unknown number, evidently of several thousands of missiles they have that are high precision GPS guided missiles that can go through a window. Okay, so here's the scenario. Let me start and open with the following. This is not an existential threat for the state of Israel. It is a strategic threat. And if Hezbollah unleashes everything they have at us, we are going to pay a very heavy price in terms of civilian casualties that we've never experienced in any of our wars. Thousands of Israeli civilians are going to be killed. And we're probably going to see a huge amount of damage to our economic and industrial infrastructure. We're also probably going to be destroying, literally destroying the country that is called Lebanon. And I say that with absolutely zero relish. Now, when you have 150,000 or 200,000 of these missiles and rockets, they can for sure saturate and overcome our triple-tiered missile defense system, our meaning the Israeli one. The presence of 2 aircraft carriers with something like, I think the United States put something like 200 planes, fighter planes disposal for this, and with their anti-missile defense systems as well, which are different from ours, it's giving us an extra boost, but it's still not enough. Okay. What it is doing, however, is probably deterring both Hezbollah and Iran from taking that giant leap. That's what the American move has done. And I'm sure you've all read this just a few days ago. Iran activated the Houthis, those the Shiite rebels in Yemen, and they spent about 9 hours shooting missiles and drones towards Israel, and all of them were shot down by a U.S. destroyer, not by Israel. So, and that was a signal both to Iran and to Hezbollah. But this, if Hezbollah enters the fray full steam, and it's still a big question mark, this is going to be a huge issue for us with our defensive capacities as they are right now. So what I'm trying to share with you is that we really do not want a multi-front war to break out. And evidently what the United States is trying to do is to prevent this to spread into a multi-front war. I have to say something with clarity here. Without the presence of the United States, we can handle a multi-front war. And I'm not saying that from any kind of position of arrogance. We will get very, very badly harmed, but they can't destroy us. We can do a lot more damage. Okay, we really can. I'm sure we do not want to find ourselves in a place where we have thousands of Israeli civilians dead in this scenario. So it's important to say that we're not facing in this sense an existential threat, but it's definitely a strategic threat. So we need to deal with this. I'll speak the obvious. Okay, we have two huge dilemmas, right? Or three huge dilemmas. The first one is Israel has never been in a situation where we have over 200 people taken hostage. Most of them were civilians. In fact, I'm struggling to think of any country that I can think of right now in the last 50 years that has experienced something like this. So there's no precedent for us or for other countries. Okay, and it's posing huge legal, moral, and military issues for us. Okay, you know, a country, a state has a moral and legal obligation to bring to retrieve its citizens. And as a Jewish and democratic state, halakha, Jewish law, on the primacy of what's called pidyon shvuim, which is the redeeming or retrieval, if you will, or ransoming of hostages or captives, is a very, very strong mitzvah. It's a very, very strong commandment. It's considered one of the highest and most important commandments. And there's a whole series of studies on this, starting from, well, it's not explicit in the Bible, but it is explicit in the Talmud and in Maimonides and the Shulchan Aruch. And the reason for that is that Jews have experienced for millennia Jews being taken prisoner, hostage deliberately for ransom. So it's something that Jewish laws had to cope with. Okay, that does not mean that the state of Israel is going to be following Jewish law. I don't want to go that far. I think that would be erroneous to say something like that. But it's yet another piece in this puzzle. So you have the issue of the captives. Okay, and any military moves we make also might be harming them. We don't want to kill our own people, and that restrains our ability to maneuver to a certain extent. We have the dilemma of collateral damage of the civilian, non-combatant, unarmed Gazan population, who, without the world shouting and without pressure from the outside, on a human rights issue from an Israeli perspective, we are not interested. We don't want to kill children and babies and women and men and non-combatants who are people not combatants. We want to take out Hamas. We're not fighting against the Palestinians. We're not fighting against Islam. We're not fighting against the Muslims. We're not fighting against the Arabs. We're fighting against Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and the other terrorist maniacs who did their atrocities between October 7th and October 10th. That's who we're fighting against, not the Gazan people, not the Palestinians. But it's very, very clear that urban warfare, and even without the urban warfare, just the bombing, everything we do, anything we do is going to take a very heavy price on civilians there. And this is a very, very heavy, difficult dilemma. Of course, maybe it's not obvious. We don't really have a day after plan. You know, you go to war when you have political objectives that you want to achieve. It's not clear that we actually have political objectives that are either attainable or that are very well defined for us. The Israeli public's hearing different things. We're hearing, to topple the Hamas regime, to hunt down and kill all the Hamas terrorists, to degrade dramatically their capacity to fight us in any way, shape, or form. Okay, we keep hearing more and more of this stuff, but we don't have a workable plan for the day after. Even if we do topple Hamas, and if we do degrade it, who steps in instead of them? Who's willing? Who's able? Who do we want? Okay, it's all these ideas of, well, Egypt this or Jordan that, or the people. They don't want to. We can't force them. Or the Arab League or the EU, they don't want to. We can't force them. They're making it our problem exclusively. It's an Egyptian problem too, by the way, but they're cleaning their hands. And the truth is that all of our fantasy about, well, they'll do this, they'll do that. I'm not sure if there's anything real behind that. So we really don't have an end game, an extraction plan. And this is also something that's delaying. Okay, because you want to use tactics and you want to have a strategy that is going to bring you to some kind of results. I'm going to stop over here and take the questions.
Okay, so we have quite a few questions. I know some of them, if we get to the other topics that we have outlined for today, we'll answer them. If not, maybe we'll take a few minutes at the end. But one of the burning questions is what happened to the security at the fences where the Hamas terrorists entered. I thought David says, I thought the whole fence was observed 24/7. And another similar question, how did they knock out cell communication, remote rockets, and cameras on the border so completely?
Okay. Look, first of all, it has to be said that this is a major Israeli intelligence snafu from A to Z. In other words, first of all, we were seeing them practicing things. Okay, the part of the failure was a conceptual one, and the conceptual one said that Hamas is not interested in attacking us. That Hamas, it's good for them that they're getting the Qatari money that keeps them in place, and the laborers coming to Israel is something that's good. It lets off steam over there. And this was a concept. This was both a political and a intelligence and military concept, which we understand now was totally erroneous. This is number one. Number two, the barrier that we built for almost $1 billion, which is a very, very sophisticated high-tech barrier, was not designed. It's not a barrier that can't be broken through. If it was manned properly and it's surveillance, and if we had done what we were supposed to do, okay, then what happened wouldn't have played out the way it played out. Okay, so it's important to say that a lot of the stuff there, a lot of the manpower was replaced with technology. So you had like automatic, you had rifles that would shoot automatically without being manned. It's crazy stuff like that. A lot of stuff, again, was based on cyber. So first of all, it's evident now that they hit us with a very, very big cyber. Well, let's start at the beginning. First of all, it was undermanned. It was just undermanned. We completely let our guard down. That's number one. It was undermanned and underarmed. Number two, they managed very, very quickly. They started the diversion with shooting rockets, barrages of rockets into Israel. And simultaneous to that, they used drones. They used tactics that were honed in the war between Ukraine and Russia with the drones. And they basically used explosive drones to knock out all of our cameras. Okay, so the people who were present couldn't see what was going on. They didn't have a good picture. Again, they were undermanned, and they broke through 30 different places using explosives, and very, very quickly took bulldozers and broadened those, expanded them. Okay, then came through like ISIS with these pickup trucks with heavy machine guns, not light machine guns, and headed for specific targets. So they knew about the music festival, which had very few guards, which had 2,000 participants. and they came with heavy machine guns, were just shooting people down. People were dancing. They didn't know what was going on. Being shot while they were dancing. They entered kibbutz by kibbutz, and all the kibbutzim have these kind of like squads, local squads to protect themselves. But if you are a 9-man squad and you're attacked by 100 terrorists, you can't stand a chance. Okay, 2,500 people came through the breach. 2,500 terrorists came through the breach very, very quickly. Okay, the Israeli army was not arrayed properly. It was concentrated in 1 or 2, actually 3 bases that were undermanned, and they broke into these bases. Hundreds of Hamas terrorists. The bases were undermanned. People were asleep, and they killed a lot of them in their sleep. Captured. Look, I'll tell you something that is pretty clear to everybody. They also captured some very senior Israeli officers, maybe generals. They hit the main base down there, which was undermanned, so it's they came, and the army didn't. They were blind, so they didn't understand. They didn't read the situation properly. Didn't understand the situation properly. The very first responders were actually the Air Force, that also didn't quite understand. Didn't understand the situation, and they killed a lot of. We know that we killed about 1,500 terrorists. Okay, or on the 7th already, mostly from the air, but not only. Okay, either coming in or coming out. Okay, but there wasn't a general mobilization, and it took time to understand the picture. There was absolute chaos. So what has to be said very, very clearly is that the system itself, which relied on too much technology and not enough manpower, and the system, the intelligence failure. There is, look, you asked the question, I'm being very, very honest with you. Okay, there's no reason, I'm very, very transparent. The whole theory was the Yom Kippur War, when we go our pants down, there's always has to be a group of intelligence that gives 180 degrees, the exact opposite of what the mainstream says. Well, we stopped doing it evidently, or it wasn't listened to, or it was poo-pooed, the naysayers, or the people trying to warn. Because there were some warnings. And by the way, it's not just military intelligence, it's the Shin Bet as well. Okay, you can have excellent collection of intelligence, the most sophisticated in the world, which we do have. But if you screw up your understanding and reading and decoding of the raw materials, that's where you can fall big time. But it's not just that, because even with the intelligence failure, we were not arrayed properly. Okay, we didn't have the manpower. Manpower was taken off and sent to a different part of the country. It's a disaster on several different levels. Now, having said all that, I want to make something very clear. And it's not a what about a comment. It's a reality. We have unbelievable heroic deeds that took place where we had people, who were totally outgunned and outmanned. One person taking on 50, who was killed, but they died with a lot of people getting harmed there. A lot of people, men and women, taking up arms. Really heroic stuff on every single level. But this was a national fiasco, and it's a systemic failure. There's no other way of looking at it or framing it. Nobody is framing it any other way. It's a systemic failure. Most Israelis, this is my last sentence on this, most Israelis see it as both a defense establishment, a security establishment, systemic failure, and a government one. Because the government had a political concept here, which was also, and it's not just the present government, it's Israeli, it's the last 3 Israeli governments. It's Israeli governments from 2015 forward. Yeah.
Avi, so we are almost out of time. We have 1 minute, and Jen Stark Blumenthal had a question, which I want us to, even if we have to stay on for 1 minute afterwards, to discuss with her. But I wanted to end on this final note of mobilization of civil society. Give it a 1 or 2 seconds to talk about that. I think it's important that we...
Absolutely. As I mentioned before, civil society, all civil society, everybody working shoulder to shoulder, Both my daughters have been volunteering, making care packages for the evacuees. My best friend is hosting a family that was evacuated from Metula. It's on the level of even people taking in pets of people who were murdered. I mean, it's on every single level you can possibly imagine. Okay, hotels being put up for evacuated people. There's a very powerful sense that civil society is working together and to try to rebuild very, very quickly and working very, very well together. This is for sure, and this is a positive thing. It's just such a shame that it took such a big calamity to bring people together here. And by the way, we're also cognizant of a lot of the help and support we're receiving from Jews and non-Jews from abroad as well. And that's important, very, very important for us here.
Okay, so I wanted to make sure we got to Jen's question. I understand we're past time, and so some people may be leaving us, but Jen wants to know about the bombing in the south where Israel told citizens of Gaza to move to and then bombed. That is a question that she is asking about. And Jen, I'm going to let you unmute if there is something more specific that you wanted to.
Look.
Do you want to unmute or can, Adi, do we have to, I can.
I got it.
Do I have to? You got it, yeah.
Yeah, I think because we're hearing on this end, that all of these Gazans died who were following Israel's direction. So I'm wondering, what is Israel saying about this?
Okay, first and foremost, we started off declaring that the Gazans had to move out of the northern part of Gaza. And they were given a certain amount of time, we extended the time. It's very clear that A, in some cases, Hamas is not allowing them to move. B, in other cases, people don't want to move. And C, some people maybe cannot move. Israel is absolutely not deliberately targeting any civilians, period. We have no interest in doing so. We have no interest. Listen, let's think clear. Let's disengage for a moment emotionally. Okay? The Israeli military has no interest in killing civilians. It makes us look bad. The whole world falls on us. The pressure to stop rises. It's against our interest. Okay, that's not even stepping into human rights issue. Okay, human rights issue, because we do respect human rights, and we're not interested in harming and killing innocent non-combatants. We don't want to do that. We have no interest in doing it. We have no political interest, and we don't want to do it on a moral, ethical basis. Okay, and it has to be said, and that's absolute. There's no question. I have zero questions about that. Okay, having said that, we're in a lose-lose situation. Every and anything that Israel does this moment, we lose. Okay, so let's take a look. What does that look like? They're holding over 200 people, most of whom are civilians. They're holding 30 people who are children. Okay, they're holding something like 13 or 14 people who are over the age of 75. Okay, they're holding people who are sick, who are autistic, the whole gamut. Okay, so and we have a commitment not to harm our own people or people who are snatched out of Israel. That's another issue here as well. I cannot imagine any country on earth, regardless of whether they are an ethical country or not, whether they're a democracy or not a democracy, that suffers an attack like what happened October 7th. And look, the proportions are important. To date, 1,400 people were murdered out of a population of 9.8 million. Proportionally, this is like 12 to 15 times 9/11. Okay, it's a huge, huge number of people, but it's not just that. It's not just that. Because Hamas and Islamic Jihad deliberately committed atrocities and filmed the atrocities. They planned the atrocities. Real atrocities. Things that no decent, reasonable, normal human being can countenance, can justify. Is there any ever any justification for rape? Ever? No. Right? No. But so, and these things, all of these things were done, and they filmed it. Okay? I can't imagine any country in the world not reacting with force, immense force. First of all, to protect ourselves. We're still getting rockets. Tel Aviv was hit by rockets today. Okay? So we're, first of all, protecting ourselves, our citizenry. We have an obligation to get our people back, and we need to uproot, what should we call them? Islamo-Nazis? I don't know. ISIS, what are they? They're genocidal, it's very clear. Everything they did fits the UN definition of genocide, 1-to-1, because it's all about intent. Okay? So believe me, I lose sleep, and I'm losing sleep also of people who are being killed over there. We're caught in a trap. They've caught us in a brilliant trap of their making, not ours. And there's nowhere out. Because you know what? Let's take the last thing I'll say. Let's say, for sake of argument, Israel says, all right, we'll stop fighting, just give us our captives back, release all the prisoners we have, secure our captives back, and we'll stop fighting. You know what happens? That's it. We're finished. Following day, Hezbollah comes in, but we're finished. We're finished. Let's not be naive. Okay, I'm not saying you're naive. Let's not be naive. I'm looking at the world right now. Okay, we have all of our choices are bad choices. And by the way, I'm not saying I think that we should now invade the Gaza Strip. I have so many of my close friends. Their sons are in the front lines right now. They're in the front lines. That they're in elite units. Kids that I know very well, that have slept over my house, that we've camped together. And I know it's very, very personal. And my wife's lost family. And there's a daughter of in my kid's school, high school in Jerusalem, who was kidnapped with her mother. So it's all these geniuses, it's not about the occupation, and it's not about any of this other stuff. This is a genocidal, Islamist, fascist movement, not dissimilar from ISIS or Al-Qaeda. Okay, right now we're the target. There'll be other targets. Why are they holding Arab Israeli Muslims there? Why are they holding Nepalese or Thai? These people have nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. They're not Jewish. They're not Israeli. They're not in the conflict. Why are they holding them? Okay, so come on. And they also murdered them. Listen, I'll just show. This one of the films. They tortured. They tortured a Thai worker. Because of course torture. They filmed the torture of the Israelis. So they grabbed the Thai and they did it to him too. He's not Jewish. He's not Israeli. He's not part of the conflict. He hasn't done anything wrong to the Palestinians. Okay, this is what we're dealing with right now, and we have only bad choices. To be honest, we have only bad choices. There are no good choices. There are no right choices, and there are no good choices. But we need to get back on our feet. Okay, in terms of our personal security, our national security, and we have to amend the ruptures that we have in our society.
Okay, Avi, thank you so much for being with us today. We have a lot more questions. We are going to take those questions and we're going to put them in a document, and Avi and I will go through them, and hopefully we can send some of them to you. Avi, one of the questions was a book that you recommend on the history of Israel. I told people in the chat we'll send that to them when we send out the recording. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And for giving us your time and a little bit of extra time. Thank you to Adi. And I know Chaim is on here today. Also, he's been volunteering, and Sandy, his wife, is volunteering. She's a therapist too, like Avi's wife, and they have been real heroes as well in this story. Everybody is a massive effort, and all of you too, all of your support. Thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Peace and love, everybody. Peace and love.